Then the dragon took his stand on the shore beside the sea, and the dragon is who? Satan. Very good. And then I saw the beast rising up out of the sea. The beast is who? The Antichrist. It had 7 heads and 10 horns, with 10 crowns on its horns, and written on each head were the names that blaspheme God. This beast looked like a leopard, but it had the feet of a bear and the mouth of a lion. And the dragon that gave the beast its own power and throne and great authority. I want us to look at transhumanist expectations. Transhumanist expectations. And that's a pretty big word, but I'm really going to give you, I've already given you the definition. I try to do this. I remember when I had to take notes on different classes and things, I was always trying to write what was being said, and it was like I felt like I was missing things. So remember, most of what I'm going to say is already here. So this leaves you free to highlight, star, jot something extra down. If God gives a scripture verse in your mind, jot that down. So transhumanism, it's really a series of technologies that are advancing so fast, they're literally changing our lives by the hour. Okay? Used to be that technology doubled every 10, 20, 30 years. Technology now is at the point where it's doubling so fast it's really hard to keep up. And each one of these areas really push the other one forward. And so here are the accelerating convergence of technologies. There's 4 that we're going to pay a little bit of attention to. The first one is genetics and microbiology. Okay? This has to do with biology, bacteria, cellular growth. It is the really what the makeup of human life. The second one is robotics. This right now, it's only being slowed by the inability to create synthetic skin. However, there's been significant advancement within the last year that they are getting closer and closer to develop this. Matter of fact, when you think about synthetic skin, the idea is this, is that a robot, okay, meaning not human, a robot can pick up an object and feel it with its touch through the skin and know what it is they're picking up, okay? Right now, that's what makes humans separate from them as far as technology goes, because so much technology advanced, they're able to reproduce and duplicate a lot of the other things. And we'll deal with some of the other things they have yet to reproduce as well. Significant strides have been accomplished in the last year. Nanotechnologies. This is machines the size of a molecule. I don't know if any of you remember some movies back in the 80s where they shrunk things, and then it was, I'm trying to remember the name. I don't even remember the name of the movie. I just remember I watched it. Huh? What? How I Shrunk the Kids was one, but there was one where they actually injected. Yeah, they injected him in a body, and he like went around the body, and he was able to see, oh, here's where you're sick, or here's where you're pregnant, and he was able to do all these kind of things. Anyway, the rule of thumb that used to be was that if you saw it in a movie, that technology is about 10 years old. That used to be that right now. I think we're seeing more and more that it's probably the technology is probably there. We're getting some movies that are maybe projecting, hey, this is how we want to do it. But anyway, nanotechnologies, the ability to shrink things down. Artificial intelligence. Can a machine think? Can it simulate cognitive behavior? And then the big question that a lot of people are dealing with right now is, can a machine hold moral values? How many of you have heard of the machines that play chess with humans and all that kind of stuff? They've come up. They've developed now a robotic dog that can jump and run at different speeds. The big question that a lot of the experts are struggling with is, at what point do we get to this point where machines now, we need to make sure that there are some values that they hold to. I don't know if you've ever watched sci-fi movies. Typically there's like 3 laws or things they give the machine, like you can't violate this law. You may never harm human life. You ever seen those kind of things? That's now becoming an issue in a real world that we live in. The acceleration of these 4 areas is called transhumanism. We are now in a post-human era. Okay? The human body can be extended and go beyond its design. It has its own aspirations and priorities that will surprise you as far as these technologies, but there are some dangers. and it's independent on, and why we're looking at it now. We'll notice some things that will obviously go, this obviously could be used in a future a way to harm people or control people. And so why are we going at? Because I want us to be aware of what's happening, because when you see it, you should have red flags to go, okay, there's a danger there. And if we're just kind of jumping into everything, there should be a problem. Matter of fact, I don't know if you figured this out with your phone, but if you talk about something and then you go online, like that's the next advertisement you get, right? Everybody experienced that, right? So this is it's called machine learning. We'll get into that in just a little bit, but this is an obvious thing that's happening. We were talking at a conference or something, and they were talking about their plans were to be able to do this so that when you walk through an airport or when you walk through the mall and they had those digital signs, it would literally change for specifically to target you. So if it knew that you were coming and you're walking and you had already searched on the internet and you were like, I need to buy, watch, I'm going to say something and now it's going to come up, I'm not going to say it. I need to buy an item, right? And then I would walk through the airport or the mall and they have those digital billboards, it would change and show that item. And companies are trying to do this. If you have a digital subscription, anybody have a digital like Disney or Netflix or Amazon, you have that? Okay, what happens? After you watch a show, okay, you turn it off and then you turn it back on and then it comes up at the very top, recommended for you. Right? Here's what we suggest. Like, you like this one, we think you'll like these. So this is becoming, what you're going to see is this is going to become more and more in our lives. There are machine enhancements. It is now possible to make an enhancement to our limbs beyond what they are normally capable of. They have now, within the, I believe it's the last year, they have created and made bionic muscle. It was about 10 years ago they first did this, and it was about 100 times stronger than normal muscle. Now it's 1,000 times stronger. I've got a couple pictures I want to show you. So the bionic muscle, how that machine works. By the way, the bottom screen, anybody recognize that photo? Where's it from? That's from Star Wars, okay? Which, 1970, okay? We're going back generations, but now that's no longer sci-fi. That's reality, okay? The top, that's what a bionic muscle, as they weave threads together, what it might look like. I think is there one more? So if someone loses a limb, they're able to reproduce the limb. And sometimes it's to the extent where it's actually better than the hand you have. I mean, look at this. In the hand, there's Bluetooth connectivity. Right in the hand. You have multi-sensory touch. The hand is water resistant. Multicolor power switch. A USB charging point right in your arm. I mean, think about that. Brushless motor control. There are so many things, and this is throughout the human body. I don't know if you've seen some of the advancements in medicine. The advancements for heart. I mean, we started with pacemaker. Like, that was a great advancement. Now we are completely, and currently, one of the things that they're currently working on is, how are you familiar with 3D printing? Seen 3D printer? So it's a 3D printer, and it takes fibers and prints objects. You can print all kinds of things for your car, for your house. Currently, they're working on 3D printing organs and 3D printing different pieces so that if something happens, they can actually go in and keep people alive. Now, that's all great. That's fantastic. But how many of you recognize there's also a danger with that as well? The muscles are made from elastic metal called shape memory wire. They're chemically powered with alcohol. In 2017, a research team from Columbia's Engineering Creative Machines, this is the statement they made. We've been making great strides toward making robot minds, but robot bodies are still primitive. The professor of mechanical engineering, lab head Hod Lipson, said in a press release, "This is a big piece of the puzzle, and like biology, the new actuator can be shaped and reshaped in thousands of ways. We've overcome one of the final barriers to making lifelike robots." The artificial muscles can serve multiple uses: prosthetic limbs for the handicapped, could also power everything from artificial hearts to super muscles for astronauts or soldiers, or even self-sufficient robotic androids. The next struggle that there is okay, if I can make the muscle, how do I control the muscle? And so you get limb to brain communication. And so robotic limbs have limited motions. The user can't feel what they're touching. Until last year, when significant breakthroughs occurred. It's the first time a brain-computer interface for a robotic prosthetic has integrated motion commands and touch in real time. It will help circumvent limits of paralysis. I believe he was an 18-year-old boy, was in an accident and had limited paralysis, and they were able to do it, and so he actually felt what was once paralyzed. I believe it was his legs. He actually could feel again. And so this helps circumvent that. Another approach is using optical fibers implanted around the nerves that can transmit more data and let the prosthetic speak to the brain. Scientists have discovered they could simulate a neuron to send a message by shining infrared light on it. DARPA, the Pentagon's R&D research branch, awarded a $4 million project led by Southern Methodist University engineers to attempt to connect nerve artificial limbs using fiber optics. Now, why in the world would the military want to know how to do these things? You all know where I'm going with that, don't you? There's a definite research there. So then we get into nanotechnology. Nanotechnology involves the manufacture and manipulation of materials at a molecular or atomic level. This is the smallest things can get. At the scale, materials are measured in nanometers or billionth of a meter. A sheet of paper, just like you have in your hand, is 100,000 nanometers thin. So think about the billionth layer. A machine that's a nanometer can be injected, ingested, or introduced into your body to find a specific location or even administer a drug. Hey, we want to inject you here, and it's going to go, and it's going to travel to your lung, and it's going to inject it in this specific point. And because it's a robot, they can actually program it. We want it to travel this path to go to this location. Could anyone control that? Possibly. Sure could. Let's look at artificial intelligence for a little bit. This really blurs the distinction between man and machine. The early days of the computer, the question was, what can man do best versus what can a machine do best? And the real question is, how can they work together to do it best? And we recognize the output is only as good as what? The input. Because who's ever controlling the machine, right? They control how it's going to act. And so while technology is great, there is also a danger that comes with it. Brain scans. First step towards computer mind reading came from brain scans using to identify certain thoughts with certain words, and that was Princeton's Neuroscience Institute. The brain scan showed patterns of human brain activity sparked by thinking about physical objects such as a horse or a house. Researchers also used the brain scans to identify the activity shared by words to certain topics. Thinking about the eye or the foot showed patterns similar to other words related to body parts. And so there are commercial and even retail products that you can buy now to actually use your mind to control things. It used to look like the guy on the left. That used to be, everybody remember those? They put the helmet on, they want you to think about something. Now it looks like what's on the right. And costs you about $100. And you wear it on your head. You can actually control apps on your phone. They even, I think I've got it in here. We'll keep going here. It was a Precision EEG Mindset was the name of the company that first was one of the first ones that started doing this. Prior to Mindset, it was a complex, immobile, and required a shielded room, but they rewrote the rules for EEG research. It delivers a raw signal, power frequency bands, and NeuroSky eSense meters. It looks at attention, meditation, eye blinks. There are several companies that offer an EEG headset for about $100 that allows you to interact with apps on your smartphone. In 2011, the world's first brain-computer interface technology, Smart TV, debuted. It's manufactured by Haier, a leading China consumer technology company, powered by NeuroSky, Think Gear technology. And basically, you wore a headset like you see on the right, and you would look at your TV, and it would change the channel. So you never had to worry about losing the remote ever again. Just losing the headset and looking like a weirdo. No. So there's all kinds of technology is advancing so fast. Go figure, the Army has mind control projects. The U.S. Army has awarded a $4 million contract to begin developing thought helmets. This would harness silent brainwaves for secure communication among troops. So basically, the commander could think a thought, a command, that would be broadcast to all the troops. They would know exactly what they're supposed to do. And that is currently under development by the U.S. Army. Brain-computer interface. There are basically three types, okay? So, and I think you'll recognize some of the dangers. The first one is called, it's an invasive BCI, okay? Invasive BCI, it requires surgery to implant electrodes under the scalp for communicating brain signals. The main advantage is to provide a more accurate reading. However, its downside includes side effects from the surgery. After the surgery, scar tissue may form, which can make brain signals weaker. In addition, according to some researchers, once implanted electrodes, the body may not accept the electrodes, which may cause medical complications. And so that's obviously something that's there. They're trying to figure out how to get rid of those side effects. Then you have what's called a semi-invasive BCI, or partially invasive, and they implant inside the skull but rest outside the brain rather than within the gray matter. They produce better resolution signals than non-evasive, where the bone tissue of the cranium deflects and deforms signals, and they have a lower risk of forming scar tissue on the brain. Then you have non-evasive. Non-evasive would be similar to the helmet. You wear it on the outside. It's not, I don't have to go have surgery. It allows brain-to-computer simulation without needing to penetrate the skull. Most brain-computer interfaces rely on electrodes. They're strategically placed in certain areas of the scalp in order to record brain activity. Amongst the main technologies in the process, it includes, I'm not even going to try that word, electroencephalogram, EEG, okay? Functional magnetic resonance imaging, magnoencephalography, MEGS, or near-infrared spectrometry. I'm not a science person, so those words are a little bit bigger than me. And so the goal is this, is that these diodes, these things would map your brain waves, and then be able to capture and then send that signal to somewhere else to control it. Applications include marketing and advertisement, healthcare, smart environments, education, security and authentication, gaming and entertainment. In the field of healthcare alone, brain-machine interface can be employed to prevent, detect, diagnose, and rehabilitate and restore sickness. So are there some positive benefits to this technology? Sure. I mean, if it helps heal people, if it helps diagnose things, that's great. But then there's also some side effects, and we're going to get to some of those here in just a second. Some computers that learn. Technology giant IBM has unveiled experimental computer chips designed for a new generation of brain-inspired computers capable of learning what's going on around them. Such cognitive computing aims to use information in forms many different inputs, similar to how the human brain can harness its experience of hearing, sight, smell, and touch. We've already seen this within the last 5 years. Smart cars, yes? Picture that, a car going about 70 miles an hour that knows when to brake, when to change lanes, when to slow down, when to speed up. Robots that play chess. Picking movies you might want to watch. It is machine learning at its finest. Nobody knows how our brains are able to separate voices. So it's difficult to tell a computer how to do it. But by using deep learning, computers are learning how. It's amazing because if you close your eyes and your spouse or your kids or a friend speaks to you, your brain knows who it is based on the sound pattern of their voice. Machines have not learned that yet. Scientists don't understand how our brains work completely. And so this is a challenge. I can tell you why they don't understand, because God created them and they're uniquely function. But they are trying to figure this out. In August 2021, IBM unveiled the IBM Telum processor, designed to bring deep learning interface to enterprise workloads to help address fraud in real time. I think I have the picture of the chip. That's the chip that they have. Telum's IBM's first processor that contains on-chip acceleration for AI interfacing while a transaction is taking place. So they've had problems with things like scams, things like fraud. Now I can't. Now the term just left my mind. What do you call it when you money laundering? Things like that. So the chip, when it's in the computers and running the software, it's AI learning and automatically learns, hey, this is a fraudulent activity. This is a potential bad transaction. Rather than, how many remember back in the day, if you wrote a check, right, and you sent it to the bank, and if you didn't have money in your account, right, then the bank notified you, like, hey, you bounced this check, come pay us, right? And sometimes you could even do it with a credit card. You'd put it in there, and then you get a notice. Hey, you're overdrafted, right? Ever got those? Now the technology is there where while you're making the transaction, they automatically know it can stop the transaction. The new chip features an innovative centralized design which allows clients to leverage the full power of the AI processor for AI-specific workloads, making it ideal for financial services, workloads like fraud detection, loan processing, clearing, settlements of trades, anti-money laundering, and risk analysis. So the power of these computers continues to accelerate. Each of these areas is not only moving faster, the rate at which they're moving is increasing, okay? And each of them pushes the other one faster. Their size, their energy, and cost continue to diminish. The facility of software continues to accelerate and expand. And this is where we get to a term that was coined a few years ago by Ray Kurzweil, and it is called the Singularity. And this is what he says the singularity is. The day is coming when the computer capability will exceed that of a human being. That what AI, what computers can do, will actually exceed what man can do. In the view of esteemed inventor Ray Kurzweil, the pace of technology change in our world is now accelerating so rapidly that there will soon be no distinction between human and machine or between physical and virtual reality. And eventually our technology will match and then vastly exceed the refinement and suppleness of what we regard as the best human traits. By the way, according to him, he believes that it will happen within the next 50 years. So this isn't something we're talking decades out or centuries out. We're talking just a few decades. Experts in their field were asked their opinion on when they believe intelligent machines will outperform humans on a variety of tasks. And I think I've got some photos on this one too. So it's in your notes. It's also on the screen. They said in 2024, AI will outperform humans when it comes to translating languages. In 2026, AI will be able to outperform humans when it comes to writing high school essays. In 2027, they will be able to drive a truck. 2031, they will be able to outpace what humans can do in retail. In 2049, they will be able to write a best-selling book. And in 2053, the AI will be better than a surgeon. Research believe that there is a 50% chance of AI outperforming humans in all tasks within the next 45 years and automating all human jobs in the next 120 years. Now, by the way, that should be slightly concerning, okay? The reason is we were created, okay, let's go back to how we're created. God created us to derive value, right, especially guys, from the work they do. However, if they're no longer doing work, where does value come from, right? There's some challenges here. By the matter of fact, in August, last month, an AI-generated photo, I think I've got the photo too for you, I believe. Did I put it in there? God, I missed the photo. I had the photo. An AI-generated photo of a surreal cross between Renaissance and steampunk painting won first place in digital art in the world. And artists were upset because how do you compete against a machine when it comes to art? How do you, now the gentleman who created it said, hey, listen, I had to go in and, but if you're not aware, I just learned of this about last month when this whole thing came out. I'm like, what? What do you mean? You can actually go to, there's a couple different websites. They're not fully functional yet, so some of them you actually have to get a queue to wait in line. You can actually go in and I could type, for example, I want a superhero dog, and the computer engine, the AI engine, will create an image based on the text that I typed. And so he said he had to go through about 80 hours of typing certain words, phrases, before it came up with the images, and then he went in and kind of created them, put them together. But AI is extremely fast at what it's able to learn. And really it comes down to the ultimate aspiration. And here's our big danger, if you will. They believe that the day is coming where it's possible to exchange consciousness between bodies. Now, some of you have heard this conversation before. I think we can go back, 25, 30 years, where people believe that you could freeze someone's body, right? And then bring them back unfrozen, right? Thaw them out, and then maybe we would have the technology to heal their body. They were sick, we froze them, and obviously this goes against God's laws. We are not God, and so to do this is very dangerous. But here it's a belief that, well, if my body is growing weak, that I can upload my consciousness, I can upload my mind to a computer, to an AI, and then, guess what? I have eternal life. I don't have a body that functions. Now I function, and all I need to do is upgrade the parts, and I can continue to last forever. I read an interview with a gentleman was doing, and he interviewed several billionaires and was talking about the current things that just about all of them are doing the same thing. And the same thing they were all doing was trying to find a way to protect their assets in case of a global panic. Go figure, right? And trying to find a way so that they could continue to live past their body's expiration date. That which makes up your mind, if it can be transferred to a machine so you can continue to think and live if your body dies, what they're really doing is seeking immortality. And the more uninformed you are about this strange idea, the more that you will understand this study, and you will realize how bizarre and how dangerous and how foreshadowing some of these technologies could be when it comes to the future. And it does raise some very bizarre questions. Why do you want to outlive your body? What is the purpose? Is it power? Money? Influence? That seems to be the top pick, if you will. Is it a fear of death? Here's this next group. You ready? It's called the Jasons. And no, I am not a part of it. Okay? It's called the Jasons. It's an independent group of scientists which advises the United States government on matters of science and technology. The group was first created as a way to get a younger generation of scientists, that is, not the older Los Alamos, MIT group, involved in advising the government. It was established in 1960 and currently has somewhere between 30 and 60 members. For administrative purposes, Jason's highly classified, is that me? My phone? I think I'm around. No. For administrative purposes, Jason's highly classified activities are run through the Mitra Center, a nonprofit corporation in McLean, Virginia, which contracts with the Defense Department. Now, have you seen many mentions of war, of military? This is a trend. Our military, not just in our world, the U.S., but around the globe, is seeking to gain an advantage when it comes to AI, intelligence, technology. Now a highly classified priority agenda drives a widespread global arms race that will eclipse all others. And what is coming out of the technological advancement is weapons for warfare. China, Europe, Russia, and U.S. are the leaders. It points to what we know is coming, okay? Is there a massive global war that is coming? Okay, if you've read ahead in Revelation, yes, it's coming, okay? There is one coming. What will that look like? We have no idea. It's a race. The current race is the race to develop the super soldier. Okay? I wish I could say he was Captain America. I wish that that's the kind of character we would have. But sadly, that's probably not what we're going to see. It's widely acknowledged among the informed that the next era to envelop us is what is called the age of hybrids. And it is emerging from these accelerating convergence of genetics, robotics, nanotechnologies, and artificial intelligence. Hybrids being this: part human, part machine. Not like we've ever seen that in a movie, and not like that movie ever ended well, right? This is what we're seeing. And so I had to quote Danger, Will Robinson, Danger, for those of you who might remember that show. Network super leaders. What would happen if you have network super leaders with unlimited mind controls? What would happen if certain government agencies could control with their mind an entire army? I'm sure you might have some that would do good with it, but could you think of the bad players in our world or in our past that would take advantage of that kind of technology? Unenforced lawlessness among a privileged few. Basically, the wealthy have the access to it. Conscious exchange for a grasp on immortality. Maybe even a collective conscious which ushers in a utopia that, hey, we all upload our consciousness to the computer, and that's where we find perfect peace and harmony. Sounds like somebody is really desperate and they're missing out on what God has planned. Nanotechnologies, molecule-sized machines, robotics, self-gratifying sentient machines, genetics, self-replication of manipulated entities, directable diseases, targeting specific groups of people or individuals. We haven't seen that kind of technology, have we? Put a star next to that one because that probably happened within the last, I don't know. I mean, I'm not going to say anything because, I'll get silent. There's a very real possibility that there are diseases out there that are specifically bioengineered to take out a class of people, group of people, people with certain traits, people with certain... It's there. We have seen it. Whether or not the government wants to admit they've used it is a whole nother question. Now, does that mean we run around panicking in fear? No, I'm not afraid. I'm not worried. But I am going to be wise. I am going to be aware of what is going on. Our artificial intelligence exceeding the human mind, the singularity. So there are some composite goals. Self-replicating sentient machines, superior or overwhelming combatant strengths, the transfer of consciousness between and to exterior bodies, which leads to a path of immortality, and a lure toward global tyranny. Put a star next to that one. I mean, think about it. If you have the ability to control armies with the mind, is that me? I'm trying not to touch anything. If you have the ability to control armies with the mind, if you have the ability to upload your consciousness to the machine, which then think about the machine has access to the internet and everything else, all those kind of things, there's a very real danger of a global domination. Now, have we talked about a global domination with the Antichrist? Yes. Am I saying that this is how it's going to happen? No. What I'm saying, it's a very real possibility that some or all of these technologies can be used for that end. Again, am I afraid of it? No, because I know it's coming. One way or another, it's coming. I have no fear in it because I know that my hope is in Christ and I know that I'm going home, right? The rest of y'all who are left behind, you have to deal with it. I hope none of you are. I hope you all come with me. Look at 1 Peter 2:11. Dear friends, I warn you as temporary residents and foreigners to keep away from worldly desires that wage war against your very souls. Let's talk about this idea of being temporary residents. Do you realize that, tell you what, just do this. Would you look around the room? Just look around the room. Look at somebody, maybe smile at them, give them a nod. Okay. Do you realize by looking technology does not want me to get this message out. That's all I'm saying. Do you realize by looking around the room, by looking at people, that you do not see the real them? Think about it. What you see is a shell, right? I mean, think about what God said about the body that we dwell in. It is dust. It will return to dust. But what is eternal? Our soul, our spirit, right? That is the real us. But do we see that? Maybe a fragment. Maybe there's some identity. But we don't really see that. And so we fight so hard for the shell, when in reality what matters is the eternal. Your body is disposable. This is going to make some of you mad, but okay. Your body is a disposable hardware environment. Yeah, there you go, okay? It is. This is, my body, this is temporary, right? Maybe at best it gets 80 years, 90 years, right? But it's disposable. The next life is the one that matters. So technology for the world looks like it frees people from the environment. Right? I want to escape this environment that's temporary because I want an eternal option. Maybe it is because of fear of death. Maybe it is because they long for power. Maybe it is because they don't know what's next and so they want to live. I don't know. But if you are looking to extend that moment, you have to answer the question, why? As a believer, I don't want to extend this moment. Now listen, I want to be around as long as I can, okay? I want to enjoy the life that God has created here in this moment. But I'm not looking to make this my permanent home, right? I can't wait for the day where I go to my permanent home. And so for the Christian, there's a different mentality than there is for the world. The world looks at it and goes, well, this is the end. Right? This life, I want to live forever. And so I've got to find a place that I can take my consciousness. Why shouldn't it be transferable to an alternative or perhaps even advantageous environment or a machine advanced environment? Think about it. If consciousness and all those things can be replicated and duplicated, then doesn't it make sense that it could be? What would limit a continuing path to subsequent upgrades? Is the setting oneself up in a position to be God? Let me ask you that question. If I put myself in a position where I can live forever, does that put me in a position where I actually take the role of God? And then, what are the biblical implications of that analogy? Do we have any other implications where people in the Bible set themselves up so they would be in God's position? Okay? Yes. And I would argue that the Antichrist is working on that very thing, that he can set himself up or herself up to be in that position. Can a composite consciousness lead to supra-consciousness or God? I remember a moment, I did a series when I was a youth pastor called Life Lessons from Horror Flicks. And I took the old black and white movies and used lessons from them. And so I did like vampires and that, the life-giving blood of Christ. And, I did little analogies. But I remember a line as I was going there because I was doing Frankenstein. And I remember a line that Frankenstein said, the Dr. Frankenstein said about the monster he created. His monster starts to move and it starts to breathe life. And he makes a statement. Now I know what it feels like to be God. And that's a very dangerous place to be. To supplant yourself and say, God, move over. Let me take the driver's seat. Let me take the role. And so, if you remember, we mentioned Ray Kurzweil and his idea of the simplicity, that there will be this replacement of human thinking and it'll go to machines. He was asked in an interview, hey, does God exist? And this is what he said, not yet. His thought is that machines will come to the place where they will actually not only outpace human thought, but they will be the place where they are God. Very dangerous place to be. So what are some other dangers? Let's look at some other dangers. The big one that I want to deal with right now is what we're going to call ignoring the metacosm. And I realize some of these words might be big, but I'm gonna help you out. So there are boundaries in our reality. This is on the screen and in your notes. Okay, you have if man, we're going to use Da Vinci's kind of graphic there, his artwork. You have the macrocosm, which is astronomy, astrophysics, this big expanse, these great big things. And here's what we've learned about astrophysics. While space is continually growing, okay? Matter of fact, and we even know the Bible said it would grow because the Bible says that God stretched out the heavens like tent poles, okay? And so it's actually God that kind of gave us that reference first. But space is growing, but at some point there is a finite limit to it, okay? While yes, it's expanding, at some point it's finite. And then if you go on the other side, the microcosm, quantum physics, subatomic particles, there comes a spot when it comes to, how many of you ever seen that trick where you have the rope and you cut it in half, and you cut it in half again, you cut it in half again, cut it in half, and at some point it's like you can still cut it in half, but really you can't cut it in half. Right? There's a point when it comes to subatomic particles that you can no longer divide them. That there is a limit on how small they can become. Length, mass, energy, time. Well, even time. There's a unit of time that's so small. It's like this is the smallest unit of time. So what do you call life with finite limits? And it's on this next slide here. You ready? You could jot it down. You call that a digital simulation. Now that's not in your notes, so you'll have to jot that one down. Life with finite limits is a digital simulation. So can I help you out here? We are living in a digitally simulated life. Would you agree with that? Okay, right? There's limits to what we can do, and we know this is not the real life, right? There's a movie that was made, was it the 90s? The Matrix. Okay? And the idea is you're trapped in the Matrix, and really it's your mind that's in here. You know what? As crazy as that idea is, in a reality, listen, the life I'm living right now, at some point I'm transported from this life and I'm going to the real life, right? There is a, if you will, digital simulation. Matter of fact, this is interesting. In the Scientific American Journal, in June of 2005, I'm going to read to you their statement. These are scientists, okay? Not Christians, scientists. Here's what they say. The constants are a tantalizing mystery. Every equation of physics is filled with them. And they seem so prosaic that people tend to forget how unaccountable their values are. Their origin is bound up with some of the grandest questions of modern science. From the unification of physics to the expansion of the universe. Here you go. They may be the superficial shadow of a structure larger and more complex than the three-dimensional universe we witness around us. Wow. Science just told you that what? Heaven's real. That there is a universe around us that we don't see. Now, we would call that, we're going to call that the metacosm. Okay? That is the universe that is, this is a shadow of a larger reality. Yes? Everybody with me? Okay? So, what is included in the metacosm? Well, the metacosm includes the microcosm, the macrocosm, everything we see, but it also includes what we would call the supernatural. Angels, demons, probably even what you would say is UFOs. Pastor, what are you saying? UFOs exist? Yeah, we've seen evidence of UFOs. Now, am I talking about aliens? No. I personally, if you're gonna corner me, I do not believe that there's alien life out there. Okay? I believe that we are uniquely created. However, I do believe that the unidentified flying object is a supernatural spiritual phenomenon that is seen. Now, whether that is an angel or a demon or something else, I don't know, but that's me, okay? That's my personal, there's no evidence in the Bible, okay? So don't come at me with that. This is just from my perspective, from what I've studied, this is what I see. So we know that because of documented physical, they appear on radar, they leave evidence behind, radiation, yet the speed and angles that they travel are impossible. Has anyone else had a supernatural vision, seeing? Anybody know someone? I have people in my family. My grandmother, when she was in high school, went to the school dance. And as she got to the school dance, God opened her eyes and she saw fire, brimstone on the dance floor. And she left, and that was one of the reasons why my family never went to dances, was because Grandma said, I saw this, you're not going. And so it's like, okay, Grandma, you know. I've had family members who have seen demons, who have seen angels. Now, we can argue about were they hallucinating, I believe that if I'm a Christian, that supernatural world exists. Yes? Okay? So, do I see it? No. I think we've talked about this before, that we see things maybe in what we call a three-dimensional, that there is a fourth and maybe even fifth to sixth dimension that we don't see. Okay? So, all those things are out there. So, that we see evidence of things materializing and dematerializing. Where are they when we don't see them? I'll tell you one of my favorite stories, just because I got a little time. Talked to a missionary who was, I don't remember where he was. I know it was on the other hemisphere. And he said he just got back from a crusade, and it was just him. He lived alone, and he went to his house, got in bed, and as he lay down in bed, he heard the rocking chair begin to creak. creak, creak, just kind of creepy, And he's like, what's going on? Is the wind blowing? Just kind of thought nothing of it, and then it still began to creak some more. And so he rolled over to look at the chair, and he said, the moment I rolled over, I knew exactly who was sitting in the chair. It was Satan. And he said, oh, it's just you. And then he rolled over and went back to sleep. Because he has no power. And so he's like, I'm not giving you any power. You have no power. Hey, dude, you're wasting your time. But those things are in our world. Now, we may not always see them. We may not always understand them. And isn't that the challenge that we have is, Pastor, I might believe in the supernatural, but because I don't see the supernatural, I don't necessarily buy into it, or I don't necessarily believe everything that happens. And then, of course, you've got people that, well, this happened and this happened, and then you question, well, did it really happen that way, right? So you have to be very careful in some of those things. But if you and I know, as we've read Revelation, has there not been some supernatural descriptions of angels, of manifestations of beings, right? Okay, so they're out there. We just don't always see them. So we would say that would be a part of the greater universe. This world is a shadow for a larger world that exists. And here's the trouble with transhumanism is that it ignores the reality of the metacosm. This idea to push machine learning, and it ignores the idea that the supernatural is out there. It takes all into account that we need to be God, that we need to set our priorities. There is supernatural warfare in which we are both the puppets and the prize. And when we open a communication channel into our software, our soul and our spirit, it yields access permission that is not reversible. There are entry points, things like a Ouija board, dolls, idols, things like that you invite a spirit world into your life. Transhumanism ignores that we have an accountability through the master designer himself, which is God. And we've talked about this many times, that there's this idea that, well, if I can do this, then I can be eternal, I can live forever. I think we can argue that was Satan's argument, right? I want to set myself up to be God, but I would argue we also see it a little bit in Genesis chapter 11. This is the building of the Tower of Babel. But the Lord came down to look at the city and the tower and the people were building. Look, he said, the people are united and they all speak the same language. After this, nothing they set out to do will be impossible for them. Come, let's go down and confuse the people with different languages. Then they won't be able to understand each other. So God recognized there's a danger in their role of trying, because if you read the verse before, it talks about, hey, let's build this tower to God. So we kind of, we want to get there. Hey, you don't put yourself in that spot. So we're going to, over the next couple weeks, we're going to continue. This is kind of a setup. And I hope you see some of the things that, hey, could this be used by a one world government? Could some of these technologies be used by a person to get into power or to control power? And so there are some real dangers. Some of them we can't control. Like I can't tell you, I can't go out there and go, I'm going to end the growth of technology. It's not going to happen. But there are some real world consequences and things that I can do. Whether it's I'm not going to buy certain products, or whether or not we need to, if a vote does come up for a referendum for a certain thing, I need to be aware of it. And so I hope that this helped at least open your eyes to some of the things that technology-wise are out there. I hope it's beneficial. Any questions? Yes, sir. Yes, human jobs being... That is the question. That is, and it's I would argue it's the same issue that we see without going down a political rabbit hole. It's with the idea of electric cars. Like, okay, electric cars, I'm not saying they're bad, but it takes more fossil fuel to create them than it does a regular car. And then the batteries in the electric cars are not recyclable currently. So now we have more waste that we can't recycle. Listen, I am not saying that we need to get away from all these kind of technology. We have a responsibility to be good stewards of what God provided, and God provided this planet, okay? So I think we should do as best we can to take care of it. But there are certain things that, like, it's beyond, whether it's, hey, it's too late, too far, or whether it's, listen, even if we did this, it wouldn't stop what's coming. And so, yeah, good question. If robots are going to replace all of our job, then how do we get paid? I think that's where you get into some of the current discussion you see in our government, which is, well, let's just pay everybody a living wage, and then nobody has to work. So, or they make us half robots, and we don't. Right. Well, and then, okay, so I'm not saying there's the control aspect, but then get into, let's talk about, because we're coming up to the next couple. We'll see if we get to it sooner rather than later. But when it comes to the mark of the beast, that's a form of technology and we already know that technology easily exists. But could that technology be manipulated to control? Manipulated to there's so many different cautions and red flags out there that it's one of those things that, listen, I think technology is great. It makes life easier. I mean, I remember not having a cell phone. I was just at that age where I didn't get a cell phone until I was in college. And I remember in high school being done with something at school, and I had to go find a payphone, and then I hoped I had a quarter so I could call my parents, right, to come pick me up. Right? I remember it's made everything convenient. At the same time, there are a lot of dangers that it's brought into our lives at the same time. So, it goes to that as a Christian, as a believer, I need to understand the technology that's out there. I'm not going to run from it. I'm not going to hide from it. But I will caution, and I will allow myself, I do not want technology to be the reason that I fail in my humanity or I fail in my Christianity. So I need to put guards up that protect me from doing so. And so there's this balance that we will all face. The next couple of weeks, we're gonna I think probably about 2 more weeks, we're gonna talk a little bit more about this and talk how this could be used, manipulated, and go into some more aspects of it. All right. Any other questions? Huh? Yeah. Now remember, the rapture is the next thing on God's agenda, right? The next thing. He says, "I'm coming soon." The next thing. So I'm gone. I'm out of here. By the time the Antichrist gets here, see ya. I'm going to be having a party with Jesus. Him and I are going to be hanging out. I had some former youth students who are like, "Pastor Jason, you're going to have this awesome mansion in heaven, and you do all this." I was like, "Listen, I don't need a mansion. I just want a beanbag chair at the feet of Jesus. That's all I need, right? That's it. If I can have that, I'm good." But yeah, so again, this is why, especially when you're studying Revelation and you see some people go down rabbit holes, I am not trying to read Revelation so I figure out how technology is going to affect the future or what's going to happen in the future. I want it to use it to beware of certain things, to, if you will, you remember guardrails. I want guardrails up to guide me, but I'm not going to put all my hope, stock, and ideas in, hey, that's coming. Because I'm called to live for Christ now. I am called to honor him here in the present. And knowing that, listen, the world I live in, it's a shadow of the reality. All that does to me, and I don't know about you, but after I read that statement, after I saw that, I was like, that encourages me more, that science just continues to back up Scripture. And it's like, hey, listen, how awesome is the next life going to be when I'm with Jesus and it's eternal and there's no more crying, no more pain, no more suffering, and I don't have to worry about any of this junk. Like, I can't wait for that. All right? Anybody else? Does this help? Does this give you something to think about at least maybe? All right? Heavenly Father, thank you so much for another opportunity. And God, I realize that some of the things we talked about tonight, it might be confusing, it might be overwhelming, it might be just for what we're looking at, God. Some of it might even go, I don't understand why it's important. But God, our heart is to learn and know you. And so we want to be aware of what the world is doing to try and subvert your authority, or what the world is doing to try to replace you as God. And so I pray that we would stand for your truth, that we would continue to love you and love each other and love our neighbor. God, may the world see you in us. We thank you, Lord. It's in your name we pray. Amen. Have a wonderful, wonderful week. We'll see you on Sunday.